In a desperate attempt to save the drought-stricken cattle farmers in the Northwest Province are selling off their livestock at an alarming rate.
The heifer just calved this morning and I had to assist her in calving. So we pulled the calf out. It's also due to the drought, the malnutrition of the fodder. Vitamins and energy in the fodder to sustain the animal's good health to calve on their own. The calf has about 50% chance of surviving it.
With no natural grazing available, farmers are turning to chicken manure to feed their livestock, a controversial practice which is banned in some countries.
Well, in South Africa, it's not illegal to feed it. Like I said previously, we are forced to use some chicken manure out of desperation. Usually, it's not the practice.
This week's special assignment focuses on the impact of the drought in parts of the Northwest Province and the desperate measures farmers take to survive this crisis. The gripping drought has affected 7 provinces across the country. Rivers, dams and boreholes have dried up. Crops and livestock have been decimated. We visited Jan van Biljon, a cattle farmer in the Vryburg area. Because of the region's large beef production industry, it's referred to as the Texas of South Africa.
This bull was a junior champion at the Pretoria Yeofees show in 2005.
Was that your first show?
No, the previous ones before that. This were the inter-provincial Northwest Championships.
Jan only farmed. The drought has not only threatened the survival of his animals, but because of the bad shape that they are in, it's highly unlikely that he will display them at the annual cattle show. His animals are largely dependent on this patch of land for grazing.
In this time of season, when you don't get enough rain, there's no grass growing. In normal conditions, we will stand this high, the grass, about hip height, in normal conditions.
At the moment?
At the moment, there's nothing, and they all must come out from seedlings.
But in other parts of the province, like Hartbeesfontein, there has been some rain, turning the scorched earth to green pasture. However, the rain has come too late and hasn't been enough to fill the rivers and the dams. John Lemmer is a farmer in the area. He has been farming in this region for close on 4 decades.
This is a borehole, one of my boreholes that dried up with the drought. I run usually about 150 hectares on this, cattle on this farm. And then fortunately the neighbour was good enough to let me get some of his water up there in that windmill in the horizon. But it wasn't enough water anyway. So every day I had to ride in water for the cattle. The windmill's pumping, as you can see, but there's no water coming out. And it's hectic with the boreholes. This is one of 4 boreholes that have dried up.
The recent sporadic rainfall in the region has brought hope to some farmers who are replanting in an attempt to recoup their losses.
The time for planting of maize to a large extent is already passed. So people are planting. A few people are planting maize, others are planting sunflower. It's with the confidence that we will have follow-up rain. So the rainfall has been very erratic. It hasn't been consistent over the whole province. There are some areas which you have visited where no rainfall at all has fallen.
On Jan's farm, the rain still hasn't arrived. The entire region is bone dry. Without grass for grazing, his cattle are getting increased.
And at the moment, they're not in condition. You can see the rib bones of some of the cows. It's sticking out, and the hip bones. They're in bad shape as they are now.
Are they stunted? Would you expect your animals to be a bit more?
Yeah, these cows in normal conditions they weigh about grams per cow. At this moment, it's a difference between 450 and 500 kilograms.
Pregnant animals are too weak to give birth naturally. This newborn calf has to be assisted to feed, only to find that the mother doesn't have enough milk for a young. Chances of survival are slim.
From this morning, about 7 o'clock, we assisted her. She's not standing up yet, but we'll manage her this afternoon. I think she will stand up.
In a situation like the calf and the mother, maybe under a shade or so.
Yeah, to take her from this place, she can have alone. I injected her, so I'm going to leave her about for another 2-3 hours, and then we will assist her to stand up.
Having already lost a number of his animals due to the drought, Jan is becoming increasingly desperate. With no grass to feed his livestock, he turns to an alternative source of nutrition.
Jan, what are you feeding your animals there?
Chicken litter at the moment.
Chicken droppings.
Yeah. These ones come from Morgenson. It's in the Vrystaat near Standerton.
Okay.
Quite far, the distance of 650 kilometers.
And how much did it cost you to bring these
The
chicken
transport
droppings?
alone were 18,500 per truck.
And is this ideal situation feeding your animals?
No, it's not ideal at all, but we must support them with. It's the easiest way to support them through the drought.
But how safe is chicken manure for cattle, and are there any nutritional benefits for drought-affected animals?
If the chicken manure is processed properly, then you are not going to have all these risks associated with it. One of the easiest way to process chicken manure is to heat it. When you heat chicken manure to a temperature of 80 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes or more, you are going to kill most of the contaminants which are there. The manure is rich in protein. It's also rich in minerals.
Dr. Malumba says because of the outbreak of mad cow disease, which was found to have been transmitted through chickens, some Western countries have banned the practice of feeding livestock chicken manure.
You have a cow which has got mad cow disease, and then that cow, normally what used to happen before in those countries, they would take other parts of that animal which are not consumed, by humans, like the brain and the bones. They grind them and they process them into stock feed for the chickens. So the chickens end up eating that, but some of the prions or proteins from there, they still end up escaping from the chickens into the litter of the chickens, and then they end up being fed back again to the cows.
In Hartbeesfontein, farmers have brought in tons of chicken manure to help save their animals. This load was a donation from chicken farmers in Mpumalanga.
Die hoendermos word as kragvoer gebruik vir die beeste op hierdie stadium, wat ons saam met voer gee, wat ons ook van Oos-Transvaal af kry. Daar's nie natuurlike veiding oor nie, ons moet nou voer.
Near Vryburg, Chief Simon Lakoko oversees an emerging farmers project where tribal land was given back to the community through the government's land redistribution program.
Emerging farmers, how are they dealing with the drought?
So it's, they are really experiencing, difficulties. Because they are still emerging, they've got, the livestock, they can't cope because of the gravity of the drought. It's too heavy for us. I'm including myself in, because I'm regarded also myself as emerging farmer, because of the shortage of the grass. They need to be given, the proteins.
Emerging farmers Tadile, who started farming 3 years ago, received a few bags of fodder from the government to feed their animals, but the feed was too little.
Mathata a kopanang le one ka ntlha rama kgomo di a shwa tse dingwe di tshwarwa ke magetla ka ntlheng ya go tlhoka go kgora Ke ne ka rekisa dikgomo tse dingwe mara tšhelete e le kwa tlase ka ntlheng ya gore ne di sena weight di le kwa tlase gape.
Patrick says he is yet to see the benefits of giving his animals chicken manure.
Ke sone so se ke sa se tlhaloganyeng ka gore ke ne ke santse ke batla go bona pele go ithuta pele ka yone gore dikgomo jang. Ka gore ka la bua gore ke fe dikgomo ke bone ka mongwe mo degte bose a e fa dikgomo.
In desperation, Patrick has started selling off his cattle.
Ga le bua le sa fele le ka nna la tswelela ga go ntha gore mo tse ke nang le tsone ke di rekisetse tsotlhe. Jaanong ke tla re ga le o ke bona go siame ke bue ke batle tse ke ka di kry-ang palo e ke ka e kry-ang ka masenta ntlameng ke a kry-ile ka gore go a tshwana le tsone ga e se gore di a go nna price ka gore price e tlabe le kwa tlase.
Since the drought, cattle auctions in the northwest attract desperate cattle farmers hoping to sell their animals to the highest bidder. On auction are mainly malnourished animals with little hope of survival. Most of them are sold for slaughter, a frantic attempt by farmers to save the rest of their herds.
So only those farmers who were alive to the fact that during the drought they have to manage their herds very carefully so that they can remain with the breeding stock, those are the ones who are going to be successful during the restocking process.
Kitumetsi Kibotlale, a businesswoman from Mafeking, is looking to restock her herd.
Last year I bought a bull at around 13,000, 15,000.
And what's happened to that animal?
Still there.
Breeding?
It's giving me more other. I've got another project. If you've got a wedding, I can sell these cows, funerals, all that.
For Mohammed Patan, who buys cattle at auctions and resells them in Johannesburg, this is a good time to buy, as they are being sold below their market value.
They buy from me at another auction, they bid it again, because the price is a bit more that side. So then they slaughter themselves then. But at times I slaughter for myself as well. Like I got a few customers in this town where I supply the meat to. A handful of 50, there's about 5 good cows that you can slaughter. The rest are very skinny. So for that you can't really slaughter them, because then you'll have to just make stew, not steak and T-bone.
Buta Dutoy of Agri Northwest explains why farmers like him are selling off their animals for slaughter.
Farmers are in a very difficult situation. You know, responsible farmers, they reduce the numbers of the animals to balance the availability of animal feed and fodder with the number of animals. If they don't, the whole herd will actually die from malnutrition. So what they do is they reduce the animals. Mostly these are the animals in a reasonable condition, so they are slaughtered. The others are sold at auctions. There's no other way except to have the necessary resources at your disposal to save them. We need rain, we need the necessary feed resources, and then you can save these animals. It's done out of desperation.
For Jan van Biljon, selling his animals is not an option, even though the prospect of them making it through the drought remains uncertain.
If you're breeding commercial cattle, you can sell them easily because you can replace them. In my case, breeding 30 years and the quality of the animals are very good. I cannot slaughter them for slaughter price, and to replace them will cost me about 25,000 rand a head, and when I slaughter the animals in this condition, will give me about 4,000 rand, 5,000 rand a head.
However, Jan is confident that the chicken manure will save his livestock. Meanwhile, maize farmers like Frikkie Lemmer have already lost more than 30% of their crop.
Of die mielie gaan produseer wat hy moet produseer, weet ons nie, as gevolg van hierdie dooie blare. En hier is mielies wat baie erger lyk as dit. So die produksie gaan definitief nie wees wat dit moet wees nie.
you planted in November, that mealie, at what height should it be at this stage?
It should be at least over the knees now.
And would there be a cob on it?
No, not yet.
Why not feed your animals these mealies? Or
Hierdie blare beteken niks, hy's poeier, hy waai weg. Die beeste gaan hom nie vreet nie. En hier's nog 'n potensiaal, maar ek hoop en bid die mielies gaan deur. Ons moet die ander wat hier is moet ons maar oes.
a rough estimate, how much do you think you've lost because of this drought?
Hierdie blok omtrent 30% wat ons verloor het as gevolg van die sonbrand en die hitte.
When you say in rand value, what does that translate to?
It's about 5,000 rand per hectare that we lose.
And how many hectares have you got here?
This particular block is about 150 hectares.
The Lemmers have a long history of farming cattle and maize in this region.
Frank, yes, I'm the 6th generation on the farm. And as my dad explained to me, unfortunately I didn't know my grandfather. But there were droughts back then as well, but not as severe as this drought. And I've been farming since 1980, I've been on the farm. And I can't think that we've ever experienced drought and heat like we've been having this past 6 months.
Meteorologists attribute the drought to the El Nino phenomenon.
This extreme drought is a result of this extreme El Nino, below normal rainfall, hot temperatures, and heat waves. The sea surface temperatures over the Pacific Ocean, when they warm, they affect the flow of moisture and the flow of air over the atmosphere. And for South Africa, the moisture will be directed to some other areas like Australia, resulting to us having below normal rainfall, and areas like Australia and some parts of the world receiving more rainfall than they normally get, and will receive less rainfall and hence result in a drought over southern Africa.
Many communities in provinces like the Northwest are hugely dependent on farming. The disruption of farmers' productivity due to the drought has had a negative impact on their economies. The agricultural business sector is significantly down compared to last year.
On the input material that we supply or sell to farmers, it's the seed and fertilizer. We can see it's roughly 40% down on a normal situation. So that will have a big impact on our bottom line this year.
Equipment like tractors?
Well, that basically dried up. I mean, if farmers are financially distressed, they don't invest in capital goods like tractors. So that department's going through a tough time this year.
Dani's main business is grain storage. He says if he takes into account what has been planted this year, his silos will remain empty.
We've got a certain hectares that farmers can plant, and we base our forecast on that. So, say for instance, if it's 400,000 hectares, which is a normal year, we get the crops coming from that 400,000 hectares in a normal year. But if we planted only half of that, and the crops is not good, you can see for yourself what will be the impact. 50% of what's been planted, and the crop perhaps not as good as previously, it will reduce the volumes tremendously, and we make our money from storage of grains. That's main part of our business.
With the silos running on empty, the poor will be the worst affected because they rely on maize as their staple food. Anthony Pereira explains the impact of the shortage of fresh produce.
The drought has affected us a hell of a lot. Simple reason, supply and demand that we've had. We're running 40, 45 degrees, so the production is by half at least. Where the guys used to get, say for instance, potatoes, Freiburg areas, 40, 50,000 bags on a hectare, they're down to 20,000. So the whole production planning for the season is by half.
The end result is that consumers will have to pay almost double for vegetables, fruit and meat.
the consumer would pay around about 70 to 80 rand a box of tomatoes now, where the same price last year was maybe 30, 35 rand. So it's almost double in price.
The government's biggest concern is how to control the rising food prices.
If you say, cap, the price increases, how are you going to control the exhaustion of the current supplies against such a huge demand? It's a basic economic question.
The minister says the government has committed to importing 5 million tons of maize to make up for the low output, in addition to the 200 million rand made available as a relief measure. Government has allocated 32 million rand to help farmers. 7 provinces have applied for drought loans.
We will do road shows to make sure that in each and every province there are areas demarcated, maybe East District, where people can be able to go and make arrangements to access this assistance.
For farmers who have already gone insolvent, government's assistance has come too late.
There's no doubt that emerging farmers most of them will not survive this drought. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, farmers who are established, they're not even going to make it without the necessary assistance.
So there'll be job losses?
There will definitely be job losses, but it's not only job losses. You should remember that the multiplier effect of agriculture in the rural areas is huge. It's much higher than in the economy in general.
Dani Mare explains the cycle of debt that farmers are in and proposes alternatives.
Farmers do get loans from banks or from agribusinesses like ourselves, and if they don't get a good crop, they can't repay. So I think debtors and debt collection will be a big problem this year. But we involved in agricultural business chamber, where we look at measures where we would like the government to not to subsidize, but to give a guarantee that the farmers can still plant in the next season.
According to the World Bank, the current drought is the worst in almost 20 years. It has pushed farmers like Patrick Motladile into despair, a situation which could take years for him to recover from. Although the drought has not yet broken, 2 weeks after our trip to the northwest, Jan van Biljon, the cattle farmer who resorted to feeding chicken manure to save his livestock, said that because of the recent rains, his cattle have improved and the malnourished cow and her calf were doing well.